Welcome back to part 28, and we'll continue with now the people who really did have something to gain from trying to debunk the story and trying to out the Lutz family as liars and scammers, because that is just the way it seems, and I mean on the surface, anyone could look at it and say, well, yeah, that there was something in it for them if they could have proved this, that there was notoriety, possibly monetary gain, that there was always something that they would have gained, if they have got their own way. So let's move on to a very notable figure or figures, were the Kaplans, who were approached by the Lutz family at a time when we've got to remember there was no internet, there was no Google searches, to look for your nearest, paranormal experts or parapsychologists, certainly no kind of, Ghostbusters to be found then. I mean, even if you look through a telephone directory, the chances are, you wouldn't really have found, kind of, a suitable person or known what they were like or anything like that. And so initially they were going to this Stephen Kaplan for help, and it was all planned. And next thing we know, it was cancelled because the Kaplans had arranged for publicity that George had specifically asked not to happen. And the Kaplan's argument was always, well, he cancelled on us and said, well, we'll have to do this at another time, because you arranged publicity and we said we don't want any. However, it turned out that they'd been, part of a press conference that same morning, so they contradicted themselves. Well, what they always failed to add to that was that the press conference that they had attended that very morning was actually, I'm going to say, enforced, or even, they were ambushed into it by William Webber, who had threatened to go and accost the children straight from school if they hadn't agreed to it. So, by all accounts, it wasn't a case of, we don't want your publicity, we're going to go and do our own publicity and, contradict ourselves. It was, a very unfortunate circumstance that the Kaplans chose to use in their favour to get at this family. And there's just so much about them. I mean, Stephen Kaplan's not with us anymore, but his wife continues to, fight his corner and claim that he is the one who debunked the whole thing, which of course is rubbish. It's not true at all. If he had successfully debunked the whole thing, then every single person who follows this case would all be on the same page. So he debunked nothing. He just simply didn't. But we are looking at a man whose credentials were very, very questionable anyway. And that's something that would like something that was always brushed aside, and oh, we're not going to talk about this, we're not going to talk about that. It's like, well, yeah, clearly you're not, are you? Because you're not legitimate. You're not a parapsychologist. It was something along the lines of a vampirologist, which, I mean, for a start, just sounds inappropriate. It sounds totally inappropriate for this case. I mean, I don't really know what a vampirologist is. It's not even a real word if you kind of look it up. I mean, at the very most, it could be someone who studies and becomes an expert in the myth of vampires, because we're talking things that are not real. So how that was supposed to work in a paranormal case, it's a mystery, really. It just really is. And so what we really got with the Kaplans was an awful lot of, well, they've snubbed us, so we're going to get back at them. And so there was a lot of, real resistance toward the story being legitimate by them taking points around the periphery. Not, kind of knowing firsthand, but looking at details that didn't add up. Now the thing is, we've got lots of comparisons to, oh, but this article said, and then this other article said something else, and then by the time we got to the book, it was something else again. Well, Yeah, I mean, so what? You know, I mean, since when has the press and the media been known for being consistent and accurate and telling the absolute truth all the time? You know, I mean, that is just no, huge shock to anyone that, newspaper articles, magazine articles were getting things wrong and inconsistent. And as we've talked about quite a few times now, the book was, proved to be, inaccurate, embellished, and not really a true telling of the story. But they're picking on all these details and discrepancies in deliveries of the story, not actually what the family themselves said. And so, we got people who, I would call it a lot of clutching at straws to get at them through bitterness. Now that's, yeah, I mean, I'm always going to say that's my opinion and it's my findings and it's what sits well with me. Yeah, of course it is, but I feel that a lot of people, if they were to look at this properly, would feel the same. That the Kaplans, that they were really really scraping the barrel for something to use against this family, because they didn't get their own way. They didn't get the chance to be involved in what could have been a big case and got them a lot of notoriety. And so what they did in turn was make it their life's mission to work against it and call these people liars. Yeah, and so we've got an awful lot of hearsay that comes from the Kaplans, and it is hearsay. It's like, well, George Lutz said, and this happens. Like, well, you're saying that, but you can't prove it's true, can you? I mean, it turns out that Kaplan's wife has actually been caught out lying about this case anyway. I mean, whether people choose to believe that or not, I mean, it's really, really up to them. But I mean, the one thing we can say for sure is that they never proved anything. They got people on their side, they got people supporting them, they got people, kind of seeing things from their perspective, and dare I even say they brainwashed some people, but they did not prove beyond a doubt that this story was fake. That they really, really did not. There's still so much that they couldn't prove or disprove either way. And yet, there's this fake glory of, yeah, we proved it. So again, you're talking someone who's got something to gain from it, that it would have been a case of, well, there's been this big story and now we're going to be famous and we're going to be rich for debunking it. Yeah, I mean, that pretty much adds up to me. Not saying you have to agree, but if you look at it carefully, maybe you could at least see where I'm coming from. Yeah, that, it just doesn't add up. And so, certainly with Weber and with the Kaplans, we're looking at people who didn't get their own way and so acted through bitterness. I mean, that seems, pretty clear in a lot of ways. And people have said this, and a lot of people have said this actually. If they had have got their own way and things had have been done the way they wanted, how would things have turned out? Of course, it's impossible to know. We can never know this. But a lot of people would say, well, if they'd have got their own way, would they have, jumped on the gravy train and, gone around, professing, yes, this is definitely a true story, because we're involved and we can make something from it. Yeah. So these are the things we've got to consider. We just do, and I mean, the other ones I will mention now is the Cromarty family. They had something to gain from calling the Lutz family liars. They just did. I mean, they didn't say, oh, this is too much, we can't live here, this is a nightmare, let's move. They went ahead and, kind of embraced the attention and the drama. And it is said, can't prove it, but it is said that they made money. And as I mentioned earlier, some would even say they made more money, from the whole thing than the Lutz family ever did. So as ever, it's more to think about, it's more to take on board. So I'll be back again very soon. Thank you, many blessings.